friends, Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time, and I'm here for another Monday this and that video where I give you updates on various things going on around here, whether it be the garden or fermenting projects, or maybe answering a few questions that have come in, or whatever else I feel like talking about. So let's get to the topics of today, starting off with the question about the dehydrated lemon slices. Now this is going to apply to pretty much any citrus fruit that I know of, at least in my personal experience. So a lot of you know that I dehydrate up a lot of citrus peels. Typically it's going to be anything more from an orange fruit such as tangerine, mandarins. Those are what we eat the most. I like those best anyway because they are thinner, and I only use the organic ones in that case especially. But I have in the past dehydrated orange slices and lemon slices and put them up. And while initially they look quite beautiful in the jar, however, what I found, even after being vacuum sealed and holding their seal, after about a year, they will start to darken and turn black in the jar. Doesn't matter how dry you have them. So somebody had asked me this question because they found that happened with their lemon slices, that they turned black, and we're just sure they did something wrong. Well, no, they didn't. And I don't actually know. I didn't look into the science on it. I don't know why citrus slices, the whole fruit slice, would turn black. It's not the peel, it's the fruit itself. In storage, I find it a little odd because a lot of times we use citrus to keep other fruits and vegetables from turning black, from oxidizing. So I highly doubt it's due to oxidation. So I stopped dehydrating the slices. I just did some to try it out, not even sure at the time how I was going to use it. But once I realized this was happening, I decided to quickly use up my slices. And in this case, what I did was I used the dried slices to make lemon extract and orange extract. They're perfect for that. Now, some other options you can try is powdering the whole thing up while it's really dry and crisp. And my guess is it might not turn black, but I can't tell you that for sure. But in using it for making flavored extracts, that is a really great way to use up your dried citrus slices. So if anyone has any thoughts they would like to share on this, if you have any experience or even maybe know why they would turn black in storage, please share with us in comments down below. And I might just pin your comment to the top so other people can see that too. Now, the other thing is that I got questioned. I put a picture of my violas. Well, they are pansies. They're a type of pansy. But the thing is, this pansy is more of a specific type of viola, where viola covers the whole broad range of violets, pansies, Johnny jump ups, viola tricolor, etc., etc. So right here I've got some dehydrated up. I've got a mix of violets, pansies, the bigger lighter colored ones you're seeing in there, and there's some darker pansies in there too, and the little Johnny jump ups, the burgundy colored ones that I'm growing. So they saw that post and noticed I call them violas, and they know they're related. But I used to use the term pansy to cover all of that. Then I realized that's the one that's a little more specific, where viola is the general term of all of those flowers. So they're all very closely related, all have very, very similar benefits all the way across the board. And years ago I did a video, which I will go ahead and link to, but it's an old video I did on the benefits of pansies. However, I have a new video coming out in a couple of weeks, I think it is, on the benefits of violas, where I'm covering all of them, pansies, Johnny jump ups, violets, because, well, they're all pretty much the same. So yeah, I have some dehydrated up, and I just recently got the pansies, these big ones, from Azure Standard, because like the burgundy Johnny jump ups, they always dehydrate up kind of a dark purple even though they're burgundy. And years ago I had orange, yellow, I had all the colors. And when I dehydrated them up, this is what it looked like in the jar, and I love how it looks in the jar. I mean, I'll still use these the same way I use those, but I love that So I'm wanting to add more of the brighter colors and the bigger pansies. The nice thing about the bigger pansies is that they take up more space in the jar, whereas like your violets, they just dehydrate up. They're tiny anyway, and when they dehydrate up, they're practically crumbs. And then the Johnny jump ups are pretty small as well, but well, they're small anyway. So anyway, you can go check out that video that I did several years ago, or you can simply wait for the new one to come out, because I'm going to cover a lot of the same things, plus a few more things that I learned along the way. But I also cover how I use them. My number one reason why I started growing pansies in the first place is once I found out they were edible, I was so excited. And it's the whole plant that's edible, by the way. You can use the leaves too. And my main thing was I wanted to add them to salads. So every year when I've got them growing and I'm starting to gather the greens from the garden, they get added to my salads. And in fact, I've even put them in potato salad just to add more color to a boring looking dish. So it does kind of freak some people out though, who aren't used to eating flowers. But the great thing about pansies, violets, you know, everything in the viola family is they have a very mild taste. They're not bitter at all, so they go well with anything. And the pansies in particular, the bigger ones, the leaves have a slight wintergreen flavor to them, so they can be really good in tea, the leaves and the flowers. And I found that when I combine the pansies, the marshmallow leaf, and what was the third one? Was it dandelion flower? Anyway, I had this combination I did, and it actually ended up tasting more like a sweet marshmallow treat. It was pretty good, but it wasn't sweet. I don't add any sugar to it. Then another thing I wanted to talk about, again, if you saw my picture I put several days back, last week at some point, I put pictures of a pile of dandelion leaves because I'm at that point where I'm starting to dehydrate them. And the one I put in the front wasn't even the longest one out of that. I was just picking the one just quickly picking one that looked pretty long. And that one was only about 14 inches. And you can see I put the ruler next to that. But since then, I've picked even bigger ones than the ones I had in that pile. And this one right here is 19 inches. And if you watched my live show from last week, I think it was a Wednesday, I had one that was 22 inches. So you can see here, this is a common ruler, 12 inches, or let's see, how many centimeters? There's 31 centimeters ish in a 1 foot. So you can see it's 19 inches long. Now, even though this one is a few inches shorter than the one I showed in the live, it's actually wider. It actually has more on it, where that last several inches down here on that longer one was just stem. So this has the greenery going all the way down the stem. So there's actually more plant material on that. Well, one of the things I wanted to bring up about the dandelion leaves is somebody, when they saw that picture of the really big leaves, they said, I thought that they were unpalatable and tough when they got that big. That's actually not true. The reason they're getting this big isn't because of their old leaves. It's because they are growing very quickly. So once your dandelion stops flowering, that's when it starts putting all its energy into the leaves. So it's funny how it works. The leaves will come out of the ground first, but they'll stay small-ish while the flowers are growing, and it's putting out all its flowers. And then once it's done, because they'll only flower for a short time of the year, then, unlike a lot of your other herbs, that's when it then puts its energy into making the leaves. And if your dandelion is growing in rich soil in a place that doesn't get full sun, they will get big. Dandelions that grow in full sun, especially in hot climates, will never get leaves like this. But I've just noticed this from experience. So my dandelions that get the biggest leaves are the ones on the west side of the house that only get partial sun later in the day and not the hottest part of the day. And they just get really, really big. And so I have another batch of them on the dehydrator right now. But no, these are hardly bitter at all. They're still tender, especially if you pick them right away instead of waiting for them to then get old. Then they can get tough. Oh, and by the way, here's my current jar of dandelion leaves that I'm filling up. Another thing I thought was interesting was somebody had commented under that picture and said that they gave all their dandelions to their chickens, and they prefer the chicory. Well, I thought that was interesting because I grow both. I grow the chicory more for my chickens than I do for ourselves, and the dandelion for ourselves. The chickens absolutely love the chicory, and while the dandelions are good for them too, and I'll add dried dandelions to their feed, the chicory is especially good for your chickens. But when I taste a leaf like this from the dandelion side by side with one of my chicory leaves, I like the flavor of this much better, far less bitter than the chicory. In fact, there's hardly any bitterness if you get them as soon as they're, they get up there, and don't wait for them to get old. They're actually quite good, and I'll eat them raw, just like this, straight off the plant, as well as add them to salads. Of course, if I'm going to add something like that to salad, I cut it up much smaller. I'm not going to throw a leaf like that in there. Now, since I was talking about dehydrating, well, you can see these are the current jars I'm filling up back here. I've got yet another pint jar of rhubarb. Once I get this filled up, I'll have a total of 2 full quarts of dried rhubarb, which is actually a lot of rhubarb. I've got a pint of valerian leaves. I'm still going to do more of that, top off that jar. Feverfew, another one I got to finish topping off. In fact, all of these I need to finish topping off. Peppermint, this is my 2nd quart for the season. Almost filled up, and I got more peppermint going in the dehydrator today. And then lovage leaves and stalks. So I'm actually going to be shooting a video right after this one that will probably publish in about 6 weeks-ish on the benefits of lovage. So that's what's out here. And then as soon as I fill up a jar, I vacuum seal it and put it back in storage. I'm only going to be doing probably 1 jar of the dandelion this year because I actually have more back there from previous years. And the dried dandelion goes into my greens blend. Along with it, I'll be adding for the first time this year the lovage leaves. And let's see what else. Nettle. The valerian is for medicinal purposes. And a whole bunch of other stuff. Carrot tops. I'm growing rutabaga this year, so I'll be putting rutabaga greens in there. Kale. And any of the really, really nutrient dense, healthy greens from my garden go into that blend. A couple of the most important ones to me are the dandelion leaves and the nettle. But I'm looking forward to adding the lovage in there for its high quercetin content and that nice flavor it will add to the greens blend when I'm putting it into soups, stews, casseroles, gravies, hamburger patties, meatballs, meatloaf, whatever it is I'm cooking up. That goes in there, so we're getting those great minerals and other nutrients that are in those greens. Now, with that said, I just want to give you I have a video I'll link to down below. The last one I did on dehydrating basics, that at least I think is the last one. Sometimes I think I found the last one, I did one just last year, not 2 or 3 years ago. But dehydrating basics, times, tips, and such. But since I'm doing mostly herbs at this time, typically I always dehydrate them all at 115 degrees. Now, some people may want to go lower. I find 115 degrees to be a pretty safe temperature for herbs. Some of your most delicate herbs, like I find golden oregano can be a little more delicate, which is that's one I need to get started soon. And so 110 is a little bit better for that. And you can tell when if your herbs are turning brown in the dehydrator, then you've got your temperature too high or you're leaving them in there too long, and now you're going to be damaging the nutrients, the medicinal properties, as well as possibly the flavor if you're putting it up for the sake of the flavor. Like, I love the taste of golden oregano, and it goes in quite a bit of my meals. I love it fresh, added to salad because it's not as hot as your regular Mediterranean oregano, so it's really great fresh in salads and adds a nice pop of that lime green color. But at any rate, yeah, that's one I try to be a little more careful. So now that I have the Kasori and a lot of the stuff that's what I use most. It used to be with my Nescos, I'd put the golden oregano on the bottom, farthest away from the heat source, so I could keep the heat at 115. And that would still dry at about an equal amount of time without burning. But now what I'm going to have to do is either put it in its own dehydrator with a lower temp and just fill it up with only golden oregano, or put the golden oregano on the front part of the tray so it's not as close to the heat source. And then as far as times, that's going to vary per herb. And I just have my dehydrator set typically at 12 or 14 hours and then check them. Peppermint, I find, typically takes longer because I leave a lot of the stems. I'll pull the leaves off the thicker stems, and you can use the whole thing. You can use those thicker stems and just make a pot of tea out of those right away, yeah, you know, with the fresh stems. But those can take a while to dry just because of the stems. Dandelion leaves can be the same if you're leaving the stems. Comfrey as well, but the green parts are going to dry quite quickly. So you just got to keep an eye on your different herbs. Watch them closely. Check them after, I'd say check them after about 4 hours and get an idea where they're at, and then just keep checking them maybe every hour or so. And as you get more comfortable and understand how quickly some things dry compared to other things, you'll have a better idea of your time. Rhubarb, I dry this at 150. Pretty much everything except for meat I dry at 115 degrees. But rhubarb, surprisingly, will dehydrate it very quickly because it's actually quite porous. So even if you have pretty thick slices in there, it dries up very quickly. But if you'd like more information on dehydrating, I'll go ahead and link to that video down below, as well as I'll just put down my full dehydrating playlist link, because I have videos that go clear back to 2016. But some things I've updated through the years. I do ground meats differently than I did when I first started dehydrating ground meats, and then just meats in general. So yeah, you might want to check that out. Another question I got several times on last week's This and That video where I was talking about the chocolate syrup, and I apologize, I did not think to say this in the video, where people were asking me about shelf storage. Well, one thing about the chocolate syrup is even though I use the dairy in there, it can still last quite a long time in your refrigerator. So I store it in the fridge, which I did say in the video. I just didn't say how long the shelf life was. I've actually yet to have any chocolate syrup go bad on me, and I've had some that we forgot about for months. And I'm like, oh, this probably isn't any good. And I get in there, I check it. There's nothing to see. It still tastes great. Not any issue. And part of the reason why is because not only have you cooked it down, is that the sugar content within that is going to preserve it as well. But I personally have not had any issue. I only, though, make a pint at a time rather than make a whole bunch. Considering the fact it's a pretty easy and quick process, it's really not necessary for me to feel the need to make a whole bunch up and try to can it. I've never canned it. I would assume it would can just fine with the high sugar content, but I've never tried it and just never had a need to. So then the other question somebody was asking me was, well, do you have a recipe for chocolate fudge? All you got to do is take that same recipe, cook it down a little bit more. It gets quite thick. In fact, the one I showed in that picture, I'll show you a picture of it here. In this image, it was hot. I had just put it in that jar, and you can see that little bit dripping down the side. Once I chilled it, it turned out more like a fudge. It turned out really thick. And I thought it was a little thicker than usual, but it wasn't burnt. It tasted wonderful, but it will take on a much thicker consistency because of the sugar and the cooking process. Just like the old-fashioned way of making jam without added pectin. It's a matter, you've got the sugar, you've got the fruit, it's the cooking that thickens it up and causes it to gel. Same thing's going to happen with your chocolate syrup. Just cook it a little bit longer. And I can't give you an exact time. It's going to depend on how hot your heat is. On that, I did it on my hot plate here, which, by the way, I keep forgetting to say, I've got my hot plates out here on my conventional stove because this time of year we're using a lot of solar power, and we're going to be pretty soon not having fires at all anymore. And so a lot of the cooking happens with our solar power on the hot plates during this time of the year on nicer days. You know, if it's still a cold day and we've got a fire going, like we got a fire going right now, but it's actually looking like it's going to be a nice day and it might get warm enough, we'll just let the fire die. Well, then I can just cook on here and, you know, do all that stuff on here and still not have to use our public power for that. So anyway, yeah, so I did it on this, and I noticed the heat. you know, doing it on here, doing it on the wood stove, or doing it even directly on here is all going to be different on the heat setting and how long it takes. So I can't tell you exact heat setting because it's all going to vary depending on your cook source. All right, well, that's my this and that for the week. Hope you enjoyed it. Any thoughts, ideas, please put those in comments down below, or even just say hi, because it helps boost us in the algorithms. And don't forget to check out the links I'll be putting in the description box down below. And thanks for watching. Take care and God bless.